Welcome back to our epic high plains trip. This is part 5, and by the end of this video we'll be up in the high plains, right on the top of Mount Howitt, and then we're going to have a look out over Wonnangatta and Dargo, and then pan around and have a look where we've just come from, up the McAllister and back down towards Lacola. And this is this steep downward section that we finished off in the last episode. And it's got quite a view off it back down through the valleys. And in this episode, we'll be heading along the ridgeline all the way up to Howitt. And there really is some great views off either side of this. It is probably the most scenic part of Butcher Country, and definitely worth heading up and doing this northern section rather than doing the shortcut and heading up towards Caledonia River. Heading over the short way, you just miss out on all the high plains, and in particular now, having this drone, it's quite spectacular when you get up to the top of Howitt at the end of Butcher Country. And then you come to the junction of obviously the Howitt Road, but then you've got the Zika Spur junction. And just having a look back over that ridge as far as you can see back out towards Dargo with the drone is really, really cool. I mean, there's great views from the top of the high plains as it is, but just the action with the drone is next level. There's been burn-offs all the way along this ridge section, on and off, and looks pretty recent. It's definitely some time within the last 3-4 months. Even though it's quite overcast here, with the contrast of all the colours where the brightness of it being burnt off and the fresh green grass, the colours really are out and about today. You can sort of get an idea here how far ahead you can see travelling along this ridgeline. No different to the last one. I've cut a fair bit of the footage out of driving along this ridgeline, so it gets pretty monotonous, the same old thing. Some people will enjoy watching the whole thing, and then some people will be bored to death. So I've just tried to find the happy medium, and this is what we've come up with. And we're not sort of doing the epic teenager thing here with trying to get the car rolling over and at crazy angles of every second of every video. There'll be certainly videos like that coming through in the series, but it's just going to be a bit of everything that you sort of get out while you're off-roading. And, most people have encountered, either being out the high country or being in their state forest somewhere. So, and as we know, most of that is just driving along like this, just enjoying the view. And I'm not sure if everyone plays this game, but it's something I've always done when I've been out the bush in the high country, and it's grown up around the bush and that as a kid and being taught it as well. But while I'm out and about and I'm cruising along these ridge lines and looking across to all the other mountains and that, I'm just trying to find the features and see exactly where everything is, like we're heading now north, and you can see those features of up around the bluff and those mountains up there. You can see them in the distance. It's quite enjoyable being able to pick all those out as you're driving along. And you're not watching the drone and nearly having crashes. I could probably call Parks and see if I could bill them for all the trimming of the trees I'd done on this trip. It was getting pretty excessive. I was very, very lucky not to have crashed and damaged the drone. Well, I crashed the drone many, many times, but I didn't damage it, which was just incredible on this whole trip. I probably crashed it easily 15 times, and it was still good to go at the end. We're getting a bit wavy there at speed. Now, something of interest as we drop away again here and look up the valley. I saw something on social media the other day, and everyone's probably more aware of it than I am, but I had no idea that in Tasmania they actually charge you to film in the parks, not just with the drones, with any camera or whatever in the national parks. Now that's just bizarre. How did that ever come into place? We really are lucky here in Victoria. There's no way Victorians would put up with that rule. That is just so ridiculous, to be charged to film in your own national park. Wow. And that's coming from the bloke that won the Australian Survivor. He's got his own social media or YouTube channel, and he's a pretty switched on fella. And he was down in Tassie, and he was just given the rundown and the run through about what was going on. It was just, man, I just couldn't believe it. It's a bit of a pain sometimes. The drone actually catches up the car when you come to a big stop, like I'm just selecting first gear low range here. This is a pretty steep drop away. And what happens is it's like it's given a close-up of the car. If you're running along at speed and then you pull up hard, it tries to pass you, which is a bit of a pain because you lose that depth of vision. And there's a whole lot of things going on here at the moment, and the driving is definitely the most important bit. But that's why we're getting those real close-ups of the car on these steep down sections. There really is some spectacular views off the side of this ridgeline here. We're right up on it, and you can see right down the really steep slopes of either side of it. absolute perfect time of year to be driving through here. Those with a hawk eye that have been watching either side of the track, there is some good spots right the way along these ridge lines where you can pull over and have a feed, cook up a feed, and just check out the view without holding anyone else up. You can get off a fair way, and even a couple of cars at a time can get off there and cook up. I normally pull over on a creek crossing or a river crossing somewhere and have something to eat, but it's not something you can do on Butcher Country. And you can see out to the right there, as we're coming around the corner, we're getting pretty close to the top and up around the high plains now. lot of this next section is pretty rough and jutted, and it's got some steep jump ups and some rock shelves and that in it where bigger vehicles or heavier vehicles have really struggled on and they've ripped it away a fair bit. And there's a couple of sections there that are a bit nasty, but they're quite easy to pass and get across on. Unlocked vehicles might have a bit of fun there if they're getting close to overweight. And it really doesn't make a huge difference up this end if it's wet or dry. It's a good rocky base. One of the interesting things about all these rocky outcrops coming up Butcher Country and the whole Howitt area, you know, this region around here's got all these rocky outcrops and cliffs, is that it's very, very big for fossils. I didn't realise that. It's huge for fossils. And there's quite a big Aboriginal history here as well. There's a lot of the geology was really good for making tools, and which, you know, it just surprises me that the Aboriginals hung out here, because it would have been pretty fresh for at least 4 months of the year. It's a long way to travel back when there was no roads, that's for sure. No fossils or rock paintings there. can't remember what the reasoning was why they wanted to close Butcher Country, but I reckon a lot of it had to do with it would have been pretty hard to maintain. It's one of the longer tracks that's still like a goat track, and it would have been a real pain to maintain it. I'm starting to get pretty keen to head back over to Billy Goats and Blue Rag and that sort of area over there. It's been, 15 or more than 15 years maybe since I've been over that bit of ground. It'd be very interesting to see it now and see what it's like. Most of it wouldn't have changed a great deal, but judging by everything you see now on social media, it's definitely a well-worn path over that way. And the Dargo pub's had more custom than it's ever had in its life, I reckon, since COVID. There wasn't much traffic back in the day, as I'm sure most people would remember. I mean, people that obviously spent a fair bit of time out in the high country in the 70s and 80s. I sort of didn't get out there until the very early 90s. I think 1990 was the first time I went out. And there was the cattlemen were still bringing cattle out of the high country at that time, and you could be on the tracks and there'd be cattle coming down, and it was really cool. Starting to get into the rockier sections now. A couple of steep pinches and rocky outcrops in the middle of the track. And thanking the lucky stars, I'm not in an FJ40 or a Series 2 or 3 Land Rover at this stage. Hands up anybody that's been smacked in the side of the head from the B-pillar in a leaf-sprung four-wheel drive on these sort of tracks. What made it even worse in an old series, and it carried on right the way through into the Perennis, was those sliding windows. And weren't they a great thing when you were going over stuff like this and you had your head out the window? It'd smack you on both sides and top and bottom before you could get your head back in. And the old disco's like riding along on your favourite armchair on a pocket of air in comparison. And this is the non-paid Bridgestone promotion. No, they're doing really well on this sort of thing. And this 18 to 20 PSI that they're at, this is pretty steep pinch here. And it's not spinning a wheel, it's just wrapping around these rocks and taking a lot of the harshness out of the drive as well. They are a really, really good tyre. It's just a pity they don't have some steel in the sidewall, but you know what? They've been fantastic, and especially over on the Barkley River Jeep track. It was pretty wild coming up there. I don't know if anybody's watched the video in the series. They're out of sync, and I actually posted the Barkley River bit, which was the end of this trip, up before Christmas. And these tyres just soaked it up. Watch how they go through here. can't see how steep it is. They're just really holding on. This is a great little spot for a stop, just on the edge of the ridgeline here. It's got a bit of a cliff you can look off, back over the other rock outcrops and back up over the bluff there. It's quite interesting. Breaks up the drive. You can actually get off the middle of the road like this idiot's driving at the moment, and you can pull up and have something to eat here as well, which it wouldn't be a bad spot for that. And I'm sure everyone can see that pretty much signals the end of the climb up Butcher Country. We're all but out now on the high plains. And you can see why they really weren't happy when they got kicked out of here, because once we get around the corner and put the drone up, it was just one of the best grazing spots for the cattle that you could just possibly imagine. And probably the last, especially all those last little bits of rocky outcrops that were crawling up there, that'll be all covered in snow during winter time, and all this area here is just completely covered. As we're going up here, the drone's facing over towards Wannangatta and Dargo. And that's Butcher Country, the track there, just heading out towards the Howitt High Plains Road. Now we're panning around towards the southeast here. That's back over towards Lacola, down the Wellington area, and the McAllister, and that's Butcher Country that would just come up there. And this is out towards Mansfield and the Bluff. And that's the end of another episode. Join us next time to head down the high plains, down Caledonia River and up Dingo Hill.